Okay. Aye. If you find your other one. It's your third one. Have I given you a third one? You wonder what's going on. Tal lost her book again.
No, you don't need it. You don't need
Okay.
to tell the world.
Oh, I just did. All right. Article. Okay. If you look at page 35, you can see the outline of what we're going to cover in this chapter, this section. Okay. The Articles of Confederation and the basics of the Constitution. All right. So the Articles, and then the Constitutional Convention. Okay. I'll do the Articles with notes for you, and then we'll talk about this Constitution, why it didn't work. Okay. What was good about it, what was bad about it, why it didn't work, and then the move towards, fixing it or scrapping it and starting over from scratch, which would be the Constitutional Convention. That puts us in 1787. Okay. And then the argument whether to adopt this new Constitution or not. You guys are familiar with the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And then the basics of the Constitution, guys, listen over here. There are 7 articles in the U.S. Constitution. The first 3 are the first 3 branches, or the 3 branches, okay? Article 4 is really important because it's based on interstate and federal relationship, that federalism, national, state, and local, that relationship. Article 5 talks about how you amend the Constitution. Article 6 about federal supremacy over the states and the Constitution. And then Article 7 is really short, just how do we ratify it? And they needed 9 of 13 states to ratify it. Okay, now you want all 13, of course, but you need 9. Okay, and so that will be the fight between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Then we're going to add in 1791 the Bill of Rights. Okay, and then over the next 200 years, the other 17 amendments. Okay, which we will learn all of them. Okay, then we're going to dig into this idea of federalism quite a bit more. All right. And then looks at, things like separation of powers, checks and balances, which is really simple stuff. Okay. Way easier than you think it is. Okay. So let's jump in with some notes on the Articles of Confederation today. Okay. Yay? Sure. Yeah. Okay. This will be light. Okay. All right. So this is written. The Articles of Confederation, you can use that as a header. Okay, let me go back. I don't know if I did this timeline in your class. Okay, 1775, Revolution, right? Also in 1775, Second Continental Congress. Okay. 1776, Independence. Okay, the war is going to last 1783. Revolution. Okay, 1781. They write the Articles. So by 83, when the war is over, the first capital where the Articles of Confederation will meet is where? Where they've been meeting. They've been meeting in Philly. Now they're going to move this government where? To New York. Okay. So our first capital is Philadelphia. The second capital is New York. Okay. In 1787, Constitutional Convention. Rewrite the Constitution. And convention, okay. 1789, Constitution approved. Ratified. Nice little timeline there. Okay. to help you wrap your mind around it. Okay. All right, so let's dig into this a little bit. So during the Second Continental Congress, they wrote the Articles of Confederation. So who wrote the Articles of Confederation? Second Continental Congress, okay? Which was in session. I should do this. Second Continental Congress was in session 1775 to 1781. The Revolution, this one here. Okay. Now, it was ratified by all 13 states, the Articles of Confederation. All 13 agreed to it. Okay. Let's look at the structure of the Articles of Confederation. The body of government. And when I say body of government, I mean one body. The Articles of Confederation, one body. Reminds you of that song, right? You sing during Mass? One what? One bread, one body, right? Okay, it reminds me of that. I like that song. You never sing that.
You want to sing it first?
No, I can't
I
sing.
like to sing.
I do like to sing. Somebody started, I'll sing along.
Anyone know that
We're on
song?
camera, miss. I don't know that one.
Does anyone know? One bread.
One body. You gotta help me.
It's just
One Lord of all.
Yeah.
What? Let's go. Cross-curricular learning,
What the heck?
religion and government.
What the heck is going
Okay. This body, would you call it executive, judicial, or legislative? It's a legislative body. Each state is going to have how many legislators? One each. How often are they elected? Every year. Elected annually. Okay? Now listen. Today, in the House of Representatives, how many members are there in the United States House of Representatives? Nice job, kids. Okay? One day that's going to be an answer on a test. Okay?
We'll probably do that.
And I did this with my first hour government regular, and we did 435 like, I don't know, 10 times before the first test. So I put it in as a fill in blank. Like 7 of 17 this day. Come on. I'll do it again. Okay. Just so you guys remember, like in history, when I kept putting World War I on the test, and people keep forgetting it. You remember? How many times did you miss those days? Okay. 1914 to 1918. Now listen, today with the House, they have 2-year terms, right? So they legislate for a year, okay? And then January, February rolls around, like we're in February right now. So all these people are gearing up to run for re-election. You know what I mean? Like, so 1 year, like what, you legislate for 6 months, you start running for re-election or what? This is crazy. This shows a major distrust in government. You understand? A lot of distrust in government. Okay? Because they want, if they don't like what these people are doing, they want to be able to get them out quickly. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So, what else? What powers? Okay. So that gives you the structure. Okay. Now, so how many total are there? There's 13, right? 13 legislators. Okay. Now, in order to pass anything in this legislative body, you need 9 votes. Not a majority, but you need 9, a supermajority. Going to be difficult to get 9 people on the same page? Yeah, it can be. I mean, just think about our East Coast guys, right? Those 13 colonies, they're so different. You know what I mean? They're really different. Okay? So that'll make it difficult. Now, they're going to choose one of the 13 to be the leader of the body. So your first president of the United States is John Hanson. He's the first one chosen to lead this body.
Was the title still president?
No.
Or not?
We have no executive, but he's the leader of the legislature. So it's kind of like the Speaker of the House, I guess you would say, yeah? Yeah, name lost to history. And then there's others that follow this, right? Because you have, what, 6 years under the Articles, okay? And those were rough 6 years. Rough, yeah.
So all of this is 1781.
Yeah, it all begins in 1781, yeah. All right, so what else? All the power is in this one body. Now, that power is very limited, okay? But let's talk about the powers they do have. Can I erase this timeline? So, under the Articles of Confederation, which is in your book, you can read it if you want, okay? I'm not going to make you read it, but it's in there. It's a good primary source, okay? Powers that they do have. They have the power to declare war. Now, when it's written, we're still at war, okay, for 2 more years. And, you know, the war moved south, okay, it's kind of split into the north and the south in the Revolution, okay, and, you know, Cornwallis was in the south, Washington was fighting in the north, and then the Southerners just, you know, they were doing enough to occupy Cornwallis because he wanted to defeat the South and then go move up north and finish off the Americans. And the Southerners just, that's why I love that. I keep talking about that movie, The Patriot. The Southerners just, you know, they made him stay down there. They gave him fits, okay? And so eventually Washington would sneak his army down south and defeat Cornwallis. And so we won the war, okay? So divine intervention, whatever you want to think. You know, I don't know how we won that war. Okay? I would imagine the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese would say, I don't know how we won that war, okay, against the United States of America, most powerful, you know, military in the world. How did they win? You know, I mean, it's similar, okay? All right. They had the power to make treaties. Sometimes your brain works and sometimes it doesn't. They had the power to coin money. Raise an army. And 5. Settle disputes between states. Now, most historians, political scientists focus on not so much the powers that the Articles had, but the powers that it didn't have. That made it so weak, okay? Now, you can coin money, but what is that money actually based on? And you had states that printed their own money as well. We've got a problem. States are printing money, the national government's printing money, we've got confusion economically, okay? Making treaties, remember, gotta have 9. Now, making a treaty with the French to help us against the British, it was pretty easy to get 9, right? And the French came in at the end and really helped us out. Because they had a navy, and we didn't. I mean, we had one, but it was tiny, okay? And we needed a strong navy to help us. And the French did that. So, yeah, at the end of the war, the French came in, helped us out, made a treaty, okay? Declare war, we were already at war, okay? Raise an army and navy, we had already done that with the Continental Army. Now it's about funding it, getting money from the states to help fund the Continental Army. This is where we really run into trouble. Okay, let's say right now, instead of 16 people we have in here, we have 13. And each one of you represent one of the states. Okay? Hope is New York. Hope is rich. Okay? Minty is Connecticut. She's not rich. She has no harbor. She has no ports. Sarah is Virginia. She has the Chesapeake Bay. And thinks she controls navigation up the Potomac. Cal is Pennsylvania. She's a Quaker. And she wants to use the Potomac. But Sarah says, Cal, you want to use the Potomac, you got to pay me. Now, Abby is New Hampshire. And you know what? She feels bad for Cal. She's like, Virginia's like screwing my friend, right? And New York's like, I don't care. I'm good. I got the best seaport in the world. National seaport in the world. Mary Ann is South Carolina. She owns a big plantation, lots of slaves. She care about Connecticut? Okay. You got 13 people in here. Who's going to settle this dispute? North Carolina? Delaware? Who's going to settle? So we're going to have like divisions in the room. You know what I mean? We have infighting in the room. Like groups of states against other groups of states. How are they going to settle these disputes? It's not going to be pretty. Okay? And you know what else? New Jersey and Pennsylvania are arguing about their borders. Like New Jersey said, no, that's part of New Jersey. And Pennsylvania, the Quakers like, I'm sorry, but no, that's our territory.
Who's New Jersey?
Alex. Okay, now, so we've got fights, right? So we look at the weaknesses of this, okay? And you start right here, guys. There's no executive branch. Okay, let's go over here. Weaknesses. Hint. Weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Everybody with me? Put a star next to it. Okay. Now, there's no executive branch. Okay, so the 9 people agree on something. Who's going to enforce this decision? John Hanson? No, he has no authority. The executive branch carries this. the enforcement mechanism. Congress passes a law. Who enforces it? Who carries it out? The executive. There is no executive. They can't enforce their own decisions. So they say, hey, listen, we want the states to stop printing money. We're going to be the only ones to print money. And they're like, no. We want to print our own money. There's no judicial branch. This is what you really need to settle disputes. When Nebraska steals all the dang water out of the Arkansas River, and so when it gets to Kansas, all the water's gone, how are we going to settle that? Well, hopefully, Arkansas will join us, and maybe Oklahoma, I don't know. But Colorado, they're probably going to be with Nebraska, where it originated. We're going to have all these fights between states. Who's going to settle the dispute? This is going to lead to war. Eventually, it would lead to war. Be tearing apart at each other. So this government is so weak, it doesn't work. And here's another one. No taxation. They can't tax the states. So where are they going to get the money to raise an army or a navy, or fund the Confederate or the Continental Army? They're going to have to beg the states for money. They can't tax. You can't just print money. It's not going to work. I.e., 7.5% inflation this year. Just keep printing money. Just keep printing money. Guys, this is something the government does. The blame of inflation is on government policy. There's no other factor. It's government policy. Okay? How do you slow down inflation? Stop printing money. Stop flooding the system with money by raising what? What do you raise? Interest rates. Guys, in order to get money that the government prints into people's hands, they loan it to the banks. The banks loan it to you and I and businesses and everybody else. There are millions of people every day in this country borrowing money. And millions of businesses every day in this country borrowing money. And it's really cheap right now. You know what the interest rate that the Fed is charging the big banks? In Japan, we'll loan you more money than you're actually borrowing. You pay back a smaller amount than what you owe. That is to create economic activity. After 2009, guys, with the housing collapse and the recession, we started printing $50 billion a month. It's called quantitative easing. Lower interest rates, people will borrow money. Think about this. If you remember when we talked about margin loans? You could borrow money at 3 or 4%, make 5, 6, 7% in the stock market, and then pay back your loan. The stock market's done well. You borrowed $100,000 and invested in the stock market a year and a half ago. You would have made probably 50 grand. Pay back the 100, you just made 50 using somebody else's money. You do the same thing when you buy a house, right? When my wife and I bought our house in 1995, we paid, I think we were at like 5% interest. Okay, that was back then, 99. Interest rates were higher. Economy was pretty good then. And we paid $99,000 for our house. I get on Zillow right now. Our house, they're saying our house is worth $220,000. We bought it for $99. Using somebody else's money, and we got a mortgage. We invested that in a home. And we're gonna, if we ever sell it, we'll get a big return on that. Okay? So right now we're at this, so you can get a 30-year mortgage because the bank's got to make money. Right? Banks are going to charge you interest. The Fed's not charging the banks interest. So people are borrowing. That's why the stock market's going like that. Economic growth. And we do have economic growth right now. We grew at 4% last year. Coming out of COVID, the economy expanded. Yes? Okay? There is good news in the economy. Wages are up. They're not keeping pace with inflation. So inflation is 7.5. Wages have gone up 6.9. That's good, but it's not good enough. Follow me? So, we need to raise this to slow down inflation. Who does that? The Federal Reserve Chairman. His name's Powell. Who is this guy? You got to look him up. Why isn't he raising interest rates? The gravy train of money is still flowing. Now, the stock market knows that they're likely to raise interest rates. Maybe in the next year. This is how you slow down inflation, guys. Because people won't borrow as much money because it costs more to borrow money. You follow me? That's the whole argument about inflation, okay? It's pretty simple. You guys are going to be affected by this stuff. You understand? Cost of freaking education. We've had more inflation in higher education than almost in healthcare. Okay? And look at energy. Gas prices are up 40% in a year. That's government policy too. Okay, sorry, I'm getting off track from the articles. Okay, but this is a problem. Okay, so the national government cannot tax the states. So what can they actually do? This government is so weak, okay, and the disputes between the states are so much, okay. So when you write about this, you need to talk about this is enforcement, right? The sword is in force. You can't enforce decisions. You can't settle disputes. You can't raise money. What good is your national government? You basically have a confederacy, right? With 13 independent states tearing away at each other. Okay? So when we talk about the Continental Army, I mean, literally, they are begging the states for money to fund the Continental Army. Okay, and you can go back. There are letters that survive this. George Washington is writing letters to the Second Continental Congress, then to the Articles of Confederation, just begging for money for the troops. Okay, and it's a really tough time. Okay, so things start to get ugly. If you guys would turn to page 40. You got a 35? You know what? No, I got 4th hour, so that's a long class. Let me just keep going a little bit. All right. You've all heard of this, Shays Rebellion, okay? I don't know what you remember or not, okay? But I want to talk about this because it shows the effects of what was going on in some of the states, and the attitudes of people, and then the attitudes of some of the really important people in our government and, you know, founders. So let me just, I'll read this. You guys can follow along. Follow along, Tal? Yeah, page 40. Daniel Shays was probably born in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, sometime around 1747. During the Revolution, he fought in the battles of Bunker Hill, Ticonderoga, where we stole the British Cayman, Saratoga, which we won, and was promoted to captain in 1777. Shays resigned from the Continental Army after being criticized for selling a sword that a French general Lafayette had awarded. He's poor. This guy gave him a sword. He's like, I'm going to sell this and get some money so I can feed myself. Maybe buy some land. But he gets criticized for it's fine, I'll quit. Okay? Afterward, he settled in Pelham, Massachusetts. In 1786 and 87, Shays was one of the leaders of an armed uprising in Massachusetts, mainly caused by excessive land taxation, high legal costs, and economic depression following the Revolution. This uprising became known as Shays' Rebellion. The insurgents were mostly poor farmers who were threatened with loss of property and imprisonment for debt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in this country, if you cannot pay your mortgage, your bills, your car payment, do you go to jail? Do they put you in jail for that? No. If you can't pay your car payment, the repo man comes, right? And repossesses your car because the bank owns that car. You don't own it because you haven't paid it off. They foreclose on your house. But you don't go to jail. That's what they were doing in Massachusetts. Okay? Would you be angry? High taxes, and then you can't pay your debts, and then they want to put you in jail? What the hell? Thought we lived in a free country. They demand it. Now, some radical ideologies floating around here. They demanded protective legislation, the abolition of the Court of Common Pleas, and a radical reduction in taxes. That's an American tradition. In 1786, armed mobs prevented the sitting of the courts of Northampton, Worcester, Great Barrington, and Concord. And Shays, with 800 followers, broke up a session of the state Supreme Court in Springfield. While attempting to seize the federal arsenal in Springfield, does that remind you of John Brown? Remember John Brown? Shays and his men were repulsed by state militia in January of 1787. The rebels fled towards Petersham, where they were finally defeated. Most of the men were pardoned a year later. Shays, condemned to death, escaped to Vermont and was pardoned a year later. The dude was sentenced to death. These guys tried to take over the Supreme Court. They were taking over these legislative bodies. What's this remind you of? Does it remind you of January 6th at all? A little bit. They pardoned these people. Okay? Now, you know these people that are being arrested for January 6th have no bail? Like, these people have been sitting in jail for more than a year, waiting on trials. Many of them were just there trespassing. Now, ones that attacked, that they know attacked Capitol Police, they should be punished. I mean, just like you would be punished for attacking a police officer. You know what I mean? You should be punished. But a lot of people that were in the Capitol that day, the crime they committed was trespassing. They were not committing violence or vandalism. They shouldn't have been there. How hard do you want to be on these people? Seriously, how hard should we be on these people? Because this debate is going on. Now, the Democrats are trying to use January 6th to point out that, all these Trump people and all these Trump voters are radicals. That the biggest threat, and I'm not making this up, people, the biggest threat to the United States is domestic terrorism. The biggest threat. They've set up a division in the Department of Justice to investigate domestic terrorism. Okay? And who are these domestic terrorists? They're Trump voters. Okay? We're weaponizing the Justice Department against the American people that disagree politically. That's kind of scary. The Justice Department also set up and used the terminology that parents that were complaining at school board meetings, they used the words domestic terror. That they were threatening school board members because of they were putting CRT or mask mandates and so forth.
Basic American principles.
My point is, we have a tradition of resistance in this country of protest. Go back to Black Lives Matter or the protests after in Ferguson, Missouri, where people would go out and block the highway. Yes? You go out and block the highway and protest. Is that against the law? Yeah. Especially when you're told to move. Okay? And people didn't. So guys, did these people go to jail? If they were arrested, they were let out that day or the next day. This is the point when we pick this up on Monday. When we read these letters in response to Shays' rebellion, especially Thomas Jefferson, he's like, look, this is going to be America. This is, protest is part of who we are. Okay? And we shouldn't discourage it too much. Our government needs to be warned from time to time that they need to listen to the people. And look at these Canadian truckers and farmers and what they're doing right now. They are disrupting hundreds of millions of dollars of trade from coming in or out of the United States and Canada. They have blocked the major bridges from Canada to the United States so that their government will listen to them to get rid of the mandates, the vaccine mandates and the mask mandates. 90% of the truckers' race are vaccinated. They're doing this out of principle. No more lockdowns, no more mandates. That's what they're demanding. Three of the provinces have said they're doing away with the mandates. It's working. They just got to convince Justin Trudeau. Okay. Protest, whether you agree with that protest or disagree with that protest, you support people's right to do it.
How does that work? Because on the border of the two different countries, like, what laws do they follow? Like, which side?
Actually, the main bridge, which is near Detroit, I think is actually owned by a person. Yeah, I was listening to a person owns this bridge. The tow truck drivers that have been told to move these trucks are not compliant. They're standing with the truckers. The farmers came in, and then the cowboys came in on horses. And so, they're calling them radicals. They just want to be free. That's what they say. They want to be free. Okay.
Cowboys.
They're just people on horseback.
Why?
Well, they have cows in.
So why are they there?
They're there supporting the truckers.
I was like, are they trying to move cattle across the bridge or something?
But you won't see that on CBS or ABC or NBC. You won't see it. There's independent journalists